We'll have a better connection now. Testing. Okay, microphone's working. Let's look at the feed. All good? Everything's good now? I'm just trying to get to the feed on my other computer. Okay. Go. All right. It's looking pretty good. Okay. My voice was far dice cake because I wasn't near the microphone. Okay, so now feed is good. Let's start over. Scooby Doo. Okay. Okay, so back to this. All right, so welcome as we're getting everybody back now. Again, this is a stream where we're going to be answering questions. But next Friday, I'm going to be doing a special stream. I'm going to be doing, if you guys have seen it before, we created a hat from scratch. And we also did a coffee maker. So I'm going to do these headphones that you're going to see popping up. So it's a how it's made stream. So that's going to be happening next Friday, July 16th. So come through and come to that stream as well. We're going to be from beginning to end making like a prop like those headphones. Doing great. Thank you, Mr. ZGMG92. Appreciate you coming by the stream. Okay. So I'm just waiting for everybody to come on through. Okay, so again, we're opening up the table here. Ask any questions that you might have. Please let me know. I'll try to answer as many as I can that I can do in the stream. But as always, I'm taking some questions that are coming through from us on our support, Discord, many other locations. And then, of course, the Twitter feed, which is the hashtag AskZBrush. Okay, so anything you guys might want to have questions to, you want to throw on Twitter. If you got a Twitter account, hashtag AskZBrush, definitely throw those up there. Okay. Oh, yes. Yes, this is a great question already coming through. Jim, so is there a fast way to make subtools from an IMM instead of doing it one by one to mesh? There's a plugin on our website that you can download and do that. You're trying to convert your IMMs to subtools is what you're trying to do. Okay. So there is a plugin that we do have that you can look at. Hold on. Let me get to that page. Okay, so hold on here. Okay, so if you're coming to pixologic.com, okay, you're going to want to go into the support resources. Okay, and then there's more plugins here for ZBrush plugins that you can get. So the first set of plugins are what you already have that get shipped with ZBrush. But there are a lot of other plugins that were made by our staff or my colleagues, which are these ones from here on down, that aren't just regularly shipped with ZBrush. They're not official plugins. But these are many other plugins. Like I really love nano tile textures. I use that one quite a bit for you jewelry people. Here's a startup utility. So if you want your ZBrush to do certain things at startup, every time you launch it, that's what this plugin will do. There's a repeating it. So if there's something that you want to do all the time, you can use this plugin. So here's what you want right here, IMM extractor. So this is going to allow you to load any IMM brush, and then with this plugin, it'll automatically take them out of the brush and make them subtools. Okay. Cool. So there's the answer for that. Okay. So we'll minimize that. So you can start where you're asking other question about launching with what you want to launch with, right? inside of ZBrush, right? So you can, like I said in you can, if you want to, download this Z Startup utility, and you can make it launch with any project you want and many other things. So to your other question, this is probably what you want to get as well, to go in there, right? So you can pick what you want to launch with, all right? And then, of course, there are other things that can do at launch with inside of ZBrush. In case you guys are not aware, in your document, you can save a startup document as well, right here with inside of ZBrush. You don't need any kind of plugin. And then same thing for materials. You can say what you want your startup material to be by clicking on this button right here. Okay. Okay. To your question, Silent Moon, for characters for a PC game, how many polygons should you aim for? That's really going to come down to the studio you're working for. That's what it comes down to, is how many polygons. Now they're giving hundreds of thousands of polygons for characters, and in some cases even up to maybe 1 million, right? So it's really going to come down to the studio you work for, what their budget is for that character. I'd say if you're trying to get a job in the gaming industry, you know, if you're going to try and show something so you want to get a job, I try experimenting. If you can, show like, hey, here's a character with 50,000 triangles, 100,000 triangles, 150,000 triangles, just so you can show them, you get an understanding of that there's going to be a range, right? You got to think, if you're the main character in the video game where that character's always on frame, that character is going to get way more triangles than a character that you meet once in the video game, right? Or a character that's always just maybe in the background, like behind me, way off in the distance. That character's not going to get a lot of triangles. So that's what it comes down to. Okay. So there you go. Hold on. How can I delete a nanomesh brush? IMM brush that I created. You want to delete like the whole brush itself? What are you talking that you've created? Did you save it? Wherever you saved it, just go remove it from that folder, Van. So if you saved it in your startup, you're gonna want to go remove it. So if you can add a little bit more to your question, are you referring to out of the session that you're in ZBrush? If you're referring to like just right now, if I want to convert this into an insert mesh brush, right? So if I go to create and create an insert mesh brush, and I'm just going to say new. So like this is now a brush. If we go to the brush palette, right, it's here at the end, right? So this is in this session. So you can click reset all brushes, and then it'll get rid of that brush. If you're referring to that where you're just talking about like in the session that you're working, that will reset all brushes back and look at the folders and only give the brushes that are in the folders. And of course, there's 2 locations that you save brushes. So if you've saved a brush that you've made there, then you just got to go delete that brush. Let me see, mini. Just seeing what I have here. Okay. So for example, right, this is just in my program files, Pixologic, ZBrush 2021. So you can go to Z Startup and brush presets. So if you save a brush here, every time you launch ZBrush, the brush will be in your pop-up brush folder. Okay. So this is part of that folder when I clicked this reset all brushes, right? When I click this reset all brushes right here that I'm hovering over right now, that is going to be what resets the brushes and looks at that folder, and then the main folder. Back here, hold on, I forgot to launch something for you guys. Okay, there we go. All right, so that if that's what you're asking about, those are the 2 situations. And then the default brushes inside of ZBrush actually live in your Z data folder. So this folder right here and your brush presets. So this is where the default brushes of ZBrush live. So this is where if you wanted to take brushes out of your brush palette, this is where you want to do it. However, okay, this is a very important Lisa needs braces moment. Okay, along with, look up here. Okay, be mindful. Don't just start deleting craziness in here, right? Because there are certain brushes you cannot delete. Like, you don't want to delete your transpose brushes. You don't want to delete your masking brushes, right? Your selection brushes. So don't just grab all these and take them out. You won't have a working ZBrush then the right way, okay? So don't go crazy here. Just pick and choose if you want brushes coming out of here. So if that's what you were looking for, those are the two examples for brushes. So then if you're trying to do it in the sessions, then this is what you want. Reset all brushes. And all my graphics are in the way. This. Then click this for the session. That's it. So you either get it right here, right? Reset all brushes when you hit the B key, or it's in the brush palette itself. Okay? It's right here at the bottom. Okay? There you go. Okay, great question coming through right now. How can I mirror subtools with subdivisions? This is great. I use this all the time myself. I.e. as an example, let's turn our floor on and let's just move this head over, right? So this head has got subdivisions, right? And now I want another, for whatever reason, I want another head on the other side, okay? So I want to say, hey, mirror and welding, right, is not going to work. So if we come here, and we go to our mirror and weld, we're going to get this. Hey, your mesh has subdivision levels. I can't mirror and weld. Okay? So what I want to do is actually in the plugins folder, in Subtool Master, there's a mirror button right here. Okay, and this is a different type of mirror. This mirroring will maintain your subdivision levels. So you click mirror, and then it's going to ask you, number one, do you want this to stay within the same subtool, or do you want it to append and be a separate subtool? And then second one is what axis. Okay, so obviously I want to mirror and weld across the X axis here, and then you just hit OK, and then there you go, done. And now I've got two heads, and my subdivision levels are maintained. Right, so obviously mindful of this. If you're trying to mirror over something that's millions upon millions of polygons, keep in mind that your computer, right, limits the number of polygons that you're allowed per subtool. So in the computer I'm on right now, I've maxed out. I can go to 100 million polygons. So we only allow 100 million polygons per subtool anyways. So keep that in mind as well. If you're trying to mirror something with subdivision levels, pay attention to your polygon count. Right? Because you're going to double that number for that particular subtool. So that's why there's the option in that plugin to either add it to the existing or make it a new subtool. Okay? What's the name of the keystroke widget I'm using? It's called Quick. Hold on. I got to minimize my other program. QI Press. Hold on. QI Press is what I'm using, is the widget I'm using. Here, let me put it in. There you go. That's what I'm using to show what I'm clicking on, so you guys get an idea of what I'm clicking on. All right? Let's see. I couldn't open my ZBrush document file. I have saved the edit button turned inactive. Well, a document is going to not be in edit mode. A document's 2.5D. It's like it's an image. It's not the model. You can't go into edit mode. You never want to save a document unless you're wanting to save a 2D image, right? So when you're saving, you have two options to save the 3D model. You save either the tool, which is going to be over in the tool palette, save as right here, okay? Or you save a project, which is in the file menu. So you say file, and then you say save as. A project's going to save a lot more, okay? A project's going to save every tool that's loaded in the session, all your render settings, anywhere. It's already going to save it in edit mode, where the model is within the document space, all that, okay? But a document saving is not saving the model. It's saving an image, just like a Photoshop program or a Painter program or any of those types of programs. It's an image. There's no getting the model back. Okay? Okay, I'm just sorry. I'm catching up. You guys are really being active in the chat right now, and I'm just catching up with... Yes, there is a way to delete just a certain number of undo history points. Absolutely. Right? So as... Here, let me just get some more points in here of interest that we can put in here. So with every stroke, we're making some more undos. Right? There we go. There we go. Okay, that's enough. So you got undos right here, right? So in the edit, you have delete older undos, or you have delete undo history. So delete undo history will delete everything. The delete older will delete from where your key marker is, this orange square. So if I go backwards, right? So now it's sitting there. If I go to edit and delete older undo, there. That orange marker now became the new starting undo history point. Okay? And then now I can cycle back forward to where I was. And there you go. So that's to answer your question. I forget who it was. I think it was someone, I don't know. The chat's moving pretty good. Okay? So that's how you can delete some undo history. If you're using projects, and you just want to delete a fast way, deleting all your undo history, the easiest thing is going into your preferences. Okay? And then in your undo history, just turn on skip loading. So if you're loading a project that has undo history and you just want to get rid of all of the undo history for every single subtool, this is the best way to do it. Okay? So, Sina, are you referring to Sina 2021? You're asking, is there a way to decrease the size of a big panorama? Are you referring to then in the light palettes, the background? Are you referring to this? Are you referring to something like this? Is this what you're referring to? So this is obviously, this is an HDRI that you can actually bring inside a ZBrush. And you can even use it for lighting and everything. And I can make it so as I'm rotating him, the image doesn't rotate. So you can say rotate with object. Okay, so any controls for this are right here. So the only thing, you got a zooming. That's it. And then you've got exposures, gammas, latitude, like where is it sitting in space, right? And then you can tilt it. That's it. If this is what you're asking. Okay? If that's what you're asking. And then now see this, I can come in here, position this where I want, right? And then hit render. Okay? And then and now we can start playing with this and trying to make it look like it fits in this world. And this is part of where the secondary lighting system called light caps comes into play. This is a much more stronger editability lighting system than the default lighting system. So in essence, there's two lighting systems inside of ZBrush. There's their default lights, which you can only have 8, and then there's light caps. So you can actually, with the HDRI, okay, you can say this light caps, and I can take the lighting information from this HDRI and plop it in, and then have ZBrush use it as a lighting. And to the point where you can reflect the HDRI in your models as long as you got a material that can do that. It has the reflectivity turned on. There's all these capabilities for sure. Okay? All right, so I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but those are the settings there. So I saw another question coming through. I'm not even going to try and pronounce what the AC button is here. Okay, next to quick save. That stands for auto clipping. So ZBrush's camera by default will not allow you to go inside the model. We don't allow that action by default. So what we're doing as the camera gets to a point where it gets close to the mesh, we keep reevaluating and keeping the camera in front of the mesh so you don't go inside the model. So when you see that AC turn on, so let's see, it's still not on, not on, not on, Not on. So you can see I can't even get it. Well, it might help if I turn perspective on. Okay, so there. You see that it's on? So it's lit up. That means auto clipping is being done. We're making sure that the camera, okay, is being kept in front of the model. See, now it's off. So now we're back to there's no auto clipping of the camera happening in essence. Okay? That's what that AC button's for, is auto clipping camera. All right, adding your own HDRI image is simple. Just do what I already did. Go to lighting and then just click on the document and then hit import. That's it. That's all you got to do to add your own HDRI. Okay? All right, there is no default to opening the material palette. You're asking this. There is no default hotkey. There is no key set to it. You'd have to set it to what you're having a conversation with Daisuke right now. There isn't one. You'd have to create it. Okay? All right, so let's go on here. Let's load and get to one of my questions that came through. Okay? Is there a way to keep polygroups after decimation? So there is, in a sense, there is a way to maintain some polygrouping after you decimate a mesh, okay? This is going to have some little bit of limitation because it's going to rely on poly painting, okay? So obviously if I'm taking this model, let's just look at only him right now, okay? And I'll divide him up a little bit so we got a little bit more, right? So we got something like this, okay? You can see there's already polygroups on him, okay? And let's give it some more. Let's now give it some sculpted, some just kind of noise. I always, my go-to for some noise is this brush with this elf and spray. Just give it a little something to have visually for us to look at. Now let's use, where are you? Yeah, that one. That one's always interesting to look at. Yes. Yes, yes. And let's turn to drag rack. Let's throw, I don't know, a couple stars on here. Let's make them be a little more prominent. Okay. So obviously we got a model here, and number one, I need to decimate it down because i.e. there's multiple reasons for decimation, okay? No, one would be I'm going to 3D print this, and the software I'm going to throw it in for my 3D printer can't handle millions upon millions upon millions of polygons. Okay, that's number one. Number two is maybe I'm in a gaming atmosphere, and let's say it's even just a prop that's in the back, or rocks, or whatever, environmental piece. I'm going to decimate it down so I can just throw it in my engine. Number three, I find it also very useful if I want to go render in another application, i.e. maybe like I want to go render in like a RenderMan, or a V-Ray, or Arnold, or Maxwell, any one of those, and I don't want to deal with displacement maps, normal mapping, then decimation is a great way to go about doing that. Decimate the model down, and the Decimation Master does such a good job of maintaining our sculpt and just stripping the polygons that's perfect to go and also for rendering, okay? So, if I want to maintain, though, my poly groupings, right, we're creating a new mesh, okay? Because when this is being decimated, there's all the vertex points that exist right now, in essence, they're going to be gone. And polygrouping is dependent, right, on vertex point, right? Each vertex point has a polygroup ID. Well, if I'm going to decimate it, that polygroup is being deleted because that vertex, in essence, is being deleted and being swapped out for new triangulation vertexes, right? So that's why that can't be maintained. However, let's take a look at a workflow that you guys can work with and experiment. And I have used this for myself in the past. Okay, so one thing that we're going to be able to do, right? Let's look at this without the line. We have polygrouping. So the polygrouping has color information. So what I'm going to be able to do is tell ZBrush, okay, I want to take the polygroup and apply it as polypaint. So I'm going to go to the polypaint menu here, okay? And you can see there's a button right here that says polypaint from the polygroups. It's a lot of P's happening right now. So when I click on this, right, you can see that the model lights up now with those polygroups. So if I turn off the polygrouping is no longer on. This is actually polypaint that we're looking at. So many P's, right? And you can see the brush, you can see the polygroups are off, and then this is now just polypaint that's being used. Okay? And now what we can do is Decimation Master has an option to use and keep the polypaint. Okay? So this button's going to do two things for us. It's going to use the polypaint to kind of control the decimating, right? So in essence, where there is polypaint, try and give us more triangles there. And then it's also going to keep the paint, right? Sorry, just taking a swig of water. All right, thanks, Daisuke, for being here and answering the questions in the chat, too. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-process the current. And because that option is on, what you guys need to understand about Decimation Master is there's 4 things that you can do during the processing. Really, there's 5 things that are happening during the pre-process. The number 1 thing that's happening every single time, analyzing the mesh, figuring out what's happening with the sculpt, and trying to see if we can maintain that. The other options are freezing a border, keeping your UVs, using and keeping polypaint, and if you have masking on the model, where there's a mask, more of the triangles are going to go in that area, right? So all these things you do, you set up your model before the pre-processing. So the only thing I pre-process here are 2 of the 5. Okay, I told it to just look at the model, pre-process the model, find the highs and lows of the sculpt, analyze the mesh, and then now number 2, I told it look at the paint. Okay, and now when I decimate, you'll notice that I've now decimated the model, but my paint is still there. Okay, so let's turn off now on the lines. You can see this is a decimated model. All right, and if I change the number, here we go to 10%, which is going to be decimate. You can see it's decimating, but notice that the paint is a driving force, specifically on the edge here. You see these lines of triangles right here? That's where you can see the poly paint has changed from this pink to this green, right? So the poly grouping's not here, though. This is just maintaining the paint. So what you can do now is you can tell ZBrush, okay, now I want you to use the poly paint again. And in this case, excuse me, I want to use the poly paint to make a polygroup, right? So the first thing we did is we used the polygroups, right, to make, the polygroups to make poly painting. And we use that in Decimation Master, right? And then now the second thing is, now I want to turn the paint into polygroups. So that's what this button is right here from Polypaint. And then now this is creating polygroups, right? So now we can start looking at polygrouping, right? So this is now, if we turn off the paint, okay, you can see there's polygroups here. Okay, so this is a way to do it. The one thing I would recommend when you're going to do this, because obviously this is using paint to turn into a polygroup. So I would strongly recommend that you, when you're creating these, not to have the polygroups have very close paint. So what I mean by that is you can see all this right here, like this arm, this leg, and this head. They all live kind of within the same color range, right? There's just 3 blues in essence, and then like a purple, which purple is to the blue spectrum. So I'd recommend these painting parts before you go and do all of this is make sure that I would probably change these. Like I would change this to probably more like a yellow or like a very different color. And then that way you can just make sure, especially when you got something like this, where the purple and this blue are going to actually touch, it's best to try and maintain these. Because it's just using the paint to convert it into a polygroup, right? So it's just using that paint ID. Okay? All right, so there you go. That answers this question. Is there a way to keep polygrouping after decimation? So this is really the only way to do it with decimating. Okay. The other way, there is, I take that back. There is another way that just popped in my head. Technically, I could project poly painting back onto a decimated model, but this is the best way. Okay. Hold on. Let me look at his question, Dice K, that came through. You're trying to answer for Ruds. Where's that question? Okay, here. Is there a way to reorient the gizmo to the object original position? I change it in any way, like switch from local to world. No. No. Once you move the model, so you're referring to, okay, so the model, the gizmo by default is going to be at the center of a mesh, right? So when I move this, the gizmo's staying with the mesh, right? And if I'm now moving the gizmo in other locations, okay, there's no way to necessarily store gizmo locations. However, I can get this back either A, by clicking on the Finder icon. Okay, these are the only two options that you're going to be able to do, is click on the Finder icon here, I like to call it, which is centering based upon visibility and mask. So what I mean by that is if you have this, see, it centers based upon the unmasked portion. So this will recenter based upon two things, visibility and mask. And since the entire model is visible, you can do this. But if we do this, you can see now that's centering based upon the visibility of that. The only other thing you can do is going back to the world, okay, is hitting the home button. So this is the world. So you hold the Alt key and you click on home, and then the gizmo will bounce back to the world axis. So now that's sitting back at the world. This is the only thing you can do for gizmos. Okay. So to your question about the Banshee, I'm going to be doing the final stream on her at the end of the month. The last day of the month, July 30th, I'm going to be doing the final stream on the Banshee. To answer your question. Okay? So the 30th, I'll be doing that one. All right, so this, as far as the gizmo, this is all you can do with as far as positioning the gizmo. You can position it anywhere you want in the world. Okay? You can recenter it, and then you can, if you hold the Alt key and hit the home key, it puts it back at the world. So in essence, this is world axis. This is centering around the world. Okay? There you go. Yeah, technically what Wintry Snowman is doing, you could 100% use a piece of geometry, right, to do that. You could even just start with that. Just put a piece of geometry wherever you want, and then you can recenter based upon that piece of geometry, right? Even if I click here and then click this, now that this cube's here, that cube can always be used as another recentering point. If I do this, so even if I'm doing this, right, I can tell it to recenter to that cube. So there's a way to do something like that, and I believe there is a plugin that will automatically generate that. Silent Moon, I'm kind of, I should keep as a separate piece. Okay, hold on, I'm just reading the question from Silent Moon. I'm kind of having problems with retopologizing. I don't know which parts I should keep as separate pieces and what to merge with the body and bake in. Yeah, that's a judgment call. I say your best thing to look at is think about, obviously you're doing this for gaming then, Silent Moon, right? You got to think about putting that, then if it's a character, it's going to need to move, right? So think about some of the pieces that would be more beneficial to stay separate for when it's moving. Okay? I.e., for example, if I was, let me pull something up to give you an example. There's a bug in my office that just keeps flying around my face. Now I'm going to have to deal with it. Okay, so here is an old example of Gears of War at obviously Epic Games. They've been using the Decimation Master since day one. It was a game changer for them, big time. Like, they were using it in Gears of War, where they were just using Decimation Master to decimate down models and go at it. So, for example, right, you look at this, right? This armor is a lot of subtools, obviously. This makes sense, this armor, to be retopologized into one mesh. Okay, because you don't need all this, right? And then to the point now, if we're going to want the arm to move, like I have this kind of movement, then that's where the topology would stop. I would stop it here, so then this arm could be a separate piece. So when I go and make that move in my engine, I get movement in the arm to move the arm, right? And it's not going to affect the armor that's on his chest. There is a great example of this, of an in-game for, I want to say Gears of War 2. Here it is, right here. This is a great example, okay? You can see all the detail in this right here, right? I don't know if that's, I'm only going to be able to go so big. Okay, so here's the finished model. And then there's the game version. Like, this is old Gears of War. This is from 2000. This is 8 years now. Okay. So right here, right, you can see their progression of how they did this for him, right? So this is a better view. So you can see the low version of this, right? There is the topology they threw in the game. But this is actually what's baked into that. So maybe this can help you to understand what to put in. Like the head, the whole head should be one mesh, right? And then you got to think about it in that sense. Because if I want the head to move, I don't want that topologizing with, obviously, the collar on this shirt. Okay. There you go. And then using topology not at the center of the world. Yeah, you can do that. So in this case right now, you can see the hand. So if on this hand, and then it's way over here, the other symmetry point. In this case, you want to turn this button on, local symmetry. Okay. And then you want to be able to start using local symmetry. Let me get rid of, hold on, we got to get rid of this cube. Because local symmetry is looking at the bounding box of all this. So let me get rid of the cube. There we go. Okay. And then now you can see these are in the locations of the palms, right? And everything's symmetrical. Okay, now if you're trying to do something that's a little more different to what DiceK has just brought up, okay? If the mesh, and this is the important part, the mesh must be symmetrical. Okay? So in this case, right, he is symmetrical. His topology is symmetrical. And if the topology is symmetrical, then you can use posable symmetry. Okay? Sorry. God, stuck in my throat. So when you turn on symmetry, there's a use posable symmetry here. Okay, so if I click on use posable symmetry, now I can do this. If I turn off symmetry, and let's go ahead and just do a really bad pose here. Right? Okay, so when you're doing this and I turn symmetry on, you can see that even though the one hand is up, right, and the other hand is sitting somewhere else, I can actually sculpt on the palms and on the fingers and on the arms, and it's the same thing. So this is posable symmetry. And I know my man DiceK loves this, especially he does a lot of figurines. So that's why he loves posable symmetry. Hold on. Gotta have another drink here. Need to get a water sponsor, DiceK. We should get water sponsors. All right. So moving along now. Okay, here's another question. Sticking with the polygrouping theme. How to polygroup meshes in the same color. For instance, two arms. Well, this is perfect, right? To this. Okay. Obviously, for this is all connected. So the only way to do this, because this arm is connected with the same topology into his chest and his head and everything else. Anyone but Nestle. Okay, so if you click on this polygroup, right, obviously I have the ability now to just show both arms and repolygroup. Okay, so you're going to have stuff like that is the way, really the only way to do it when they're all connected as one. Okay, however, if we did something, let's go ahead and split these off so that they're their own, right? And then let's say this did have, okay, separate polygroups. Okay, and then now let's say, let's go ahead and merge this down. Let's add more elements into this now. So let's say we've got, you guys got to say something like this, right? So now what you've got is you've got pieces here, okay, that have multiple polygroups. And let's say, let's take this even one step further, okay? And let's say now you've got this, where everything is one polygroup. And then I clearly want the arms to be their own polygroup, and I want that vest, I want the backpack, and that shoulder pad to be their own polygroups. There is a solution for this with one button, actually. Okay, so answering this question, okay, is in the polygroups, okay, is clicking merge similar groups, right? And what ZBrush is going to do is go through analyzing and looking at this, right, and trying to find similarities, right? So if you do auto group, you get this, right? So if you do merge similar groups, you can see the arms now became the same polygroup. Okay, so this is going to be in this process, this, okay? This is all one polygroup. So if I auto group it, you can see that here, let's make one arm have a very different polygroup. There you go. That every now shell, which this is important, gets its own polygroup. And then the second step, here, I'm going to turn off the question because it's just bold. Okay, and now the second step is hit merge similar. And what this is actually doing, so you guys know what merge similar is doing, is finding vertex point order. So anything that has the exact same vertex point order in this scenario is going to get the same polygroup. So let's say we start using even inserts meshes. So let's just start grabbing, say, something like this. Okay, and then grab something like this. All right, there's that. Let's get something a little more fun, a little cooler, right? Grab something like these. Grab something like this. Okay, so there's all of these, right? So you can see auto grouping, each shell gets a polygroup. And now if I hit merge similar groups, every vertex point that matches get now the same polygroup. So you can see all the spherical shapes get one polygroup. All of these get one polygroup. Okay? So this is very valuable. Let's put it in context of a vehicle. If you had like 4 wheels and 4 rims, you can actually, with this merge similar groups, assign all the tires the same polygroup, all the rims the same polygroup with one click. And let's not also forget, people, okay, that we have a new button for growing, okay, in your visibility. So when you're doing something like this, don't forget now growing the same polygroup. This is a big one for me, okay? Right? So this new button right here, Control-Shift-Q, it will go and even find all the spherical elements that share the same polygroup. Like, just think about all this workflow abilities. Okay? So, again, think about this. I only need to show a portion of this, right? And if I click that one button or use the shortcut, Control-Shift-Q, it's going to give me all of them. So you guys can see a very useful workflow here, right? And you guys can make a macro, if you want, that does auto group first and then does similar. And you just call it whatever you want. You can say auto similar groups. Let's say a button, right? You could just create a macro here, right? You start a new macro, and then these macros were one button solutions doing that action. Okay? Does that make sense? Does everyone know how to make a macro? Do you guys want me to make this macro, or does everyone understand that? God, my throat is just not cooperating with us today. Okay, so listen, I'm going to do it. Right, so if I want to make this a macro all the time, okay, I'm just going to say new macro. Right, and it's asking me, do I want to execute ZBrush? In essence, do I want to initialize, start from scratch? I'm going to say no. And now it's just looking for what do I press and change in the UI. Okay, so I'm going to do auto group first, and then I'm going to do merge similar groups. That's it. That macro is now done. So I click macro, I say end macro, and what this is going to do is load on automatically. It's going into ZBrush 2021, Z Startup macros. So here is an important Lisa needs braces moment. Lisa needs braces moment for you all. You must put the macro in a folder. Okay? It's best to put it in a folder. So the miscellaneous is holding all these macros. So I would call this auto, right? Auto PG. Okay. No, I don't need it. Okay, so now the beauty of this is you can reload the macros. Okay, so this can reload them. Okay, and then there it is right there. Okay, so Control W and boom, and there with one action, I'm clicking two buttons. All right, and then of course, this macro is now saved on my computer that I'm on right now. So you guys can start your own hotkey, right? So now I can change this macro and assign its own hotkey to whatever I want it to be. I'm just going to give it the number 7 right now because 7's already assigned to something else, right? So in essence, I can now just hit the 7 key and it does that. Okay? And then yes, this macro 6.6 syndicate is going to be always in this ZBrush now. The only way I'm going to use this macro is if I uninstall this ZBrush. It's loaded into that folder, so it's always going to be there. Okay? So the answer goes, there you go. There you have it. Again, ZBrush's renderer is not photorealistic. There's certain things that the renderer does not have. So you're going to get a beautiful render. You can get really gorgeous renders for sure. Like, here, let me find another. Here, I'll find you a render that's out of ZBrush. ZBrush, let's see if I can find the image fast. I can show you a really I might have to go. It's really old on ZBrush Central, so it would take me a minute to find it exactly, so you guys can see what you can do in ZBrush's renderer. There's a lot you can do in ZBrush's renderer. NPRs are a lot of fun, and you can get some really good quality renders out of ZBrush for sure. Changing your shadows is going to be one of your important things for sure. Here we go. Here it is. Found it. Found it. Okay, so this is out of ZBrush. This is straight out of ZBrush render. That is a ZBrush render. Nothing else. Okay? So you can get a really good quality, but rendering, there's a lot to rendering. It's not just about shadows. There's a lot of things going into this. It's the material selection and what materials are doing, and painting with materials, the poly paint, the model, the lighting, and then all the render settings come into play. Like those are your 4 factors, right? This particular thread has a video that used to be here. I don't know if it's still here because this is really old. Yeah, I'm gonna need to download this. But here, if you want to see a render, this is just only using even just 2 lights. So here, I'll put that link in there so you guys can see this. Okay. Okay, so there you go. This is what you can do rendering-wise. Okay. So the key part, of shadows, all right, just since you're talking about it and it's something near and dear, let me load something. Let me give you, again, I have discussed this in previous streams, okay, but I'm going to give you, again, really the 2 main sliders for your shadows. Okay, so let me open up this, and this is important. So rendering, plop it over there. Okay, so you've got shadow settings here. The 2 most important for this is raise and angle. Okay, so if I just drop these all the way down to the lowest and I hit render, I'm going to get more like cartoon or like anime type of shadowing. It's very outlined, very harsh shadows. Okay, so if I don't want this and I want to put a little more softness into the shadow, do I want a shadow that kind of is very harsh like this but only soft edges? Do I want a shadow that's just really more blurry? Or do I want a shadow that is kind of looking like it's got multiple shadows happening? Because depending on the light it's bouncing, that all comes into play. And that's all what these 2 sliders are controlling. Okay, so your rays, in essence, off the light, how many rays of light are coming off? Okay, and your angle is, in essence, like a penumbra. Like how much of an opening are you allowing those rays to come off? Right? That's what that is. So what I mean by that is, here, let's come out of edit mode. Okay, and let's use a brush. I guess we'll just use the simple brush. And we won't do any add, we'll do any color. Okay, so what I mean by that is, okay, let's see. Oops, might help if I change my stroke. Hold on, and oops. Not letting me, hold on. There we go. Okay, so let's say as an example, okay, I just want RGB. Let's go 100%. Let's do some Z-add. I guess we'll do some Z-add. So you've got, let's say, something up here, right? That's kind of like a light source. Okay, and then that has an angle opening coming off that light source, right? So is the angle this much, or is the angle this much, right? And then the lighting system has rays coming out of the light, right? So the more rays you give it, the more information, in essence, you're giving to the shadows, so how the shadows should be cast. And then the penumbra is different. So if we go back to looking at, or the opening here, right? If the opening is only this big, then our lighting, okay, can only come out like this. That's as far as it goes, right? But if we've got a bigger opening, right? Now we've got much more room for lights to cast in. Okay? So, with that said, let's go back to, okay, this. When we are rendering out, okay, Shift R, this is really important. So now if I do more rays and a little bit of angle, Okay, so I'm talking, let's do like 30 rays and then an angle of 5. What we're going to get are shadows. Here, let me zoom up even more so you guys can really see the shadows. They're going to be solid, but they start to blur along the edge. Right? You can see there's a slight blurring starting to happen along the edge. Okay, and if I give more rays, that blur is going to become even stronger. Okay, and then of course now if I want to open this up, then I open up my angle more, right? And if I render this out, you're going to see it's got really broken up shadows. Okay, and then obviously if I don't want those shadows to be broken up, then that means the rays need to be turned up quite a bit. And then keep in mind, the more rays you throw at it, the longer your render will take. But you're not talking hours of rendering. So you can see this is a shadow that's more of like a softer shadow, okay, to have in there. Okay, so there you go. There's a little crash course again on those two. Right, so that's really important. But it really, that's just like this much of rendering. It's all about materials and everything else too. It's not just about your shadows. There's AOs, there's subsurface scattering, which ZBrush does have. I did a 4-part streaming series on rendering in ZBrush, starting from the very basics in the first stream and slowly getting to more advanced, to the point of getting a render like starting getting a render like this. So I would recommend going back and watching that series that I did. That was like I don't even know, almost a year ago. Okay, so it's on our YouTube channel. So you're asking me how do I do this, you mean? How do I do this magnifying? Is what you're asking for when you're trying to make a video? That's Shift M, as in magnify. Shift M. And then you have settings for that in the preferences. Okay, the magnifying glass is here. So you can see there's the on button. I can make the radius bigger. I can change up the zooming. I can get rid of the curvature, right? And then have no fade at all if I want to. Do I want any shadowing at all? Do I want the stronger frame or no frame? And then you can mix those colors, and then you have curves, right? So you can even do something like this, which is really handy if you're someone that's teaching, especially like right now we're over streaming. This is great. Okay. There you go. That's what I'm doing. Okay, so let's move on now. Let's continue our journey of questions here. Here is one that came out. I thought this was fun. That's a fun question. What's the best way to create a section view in ZBrush? For example, like a candy bar. This one's just fun for me. I think it would be something fun. Let's model a candy bar wafer thing real fast. just to, I don't know. I thought it'd be something fun to do. Okay, so we're gonna need some wafering, some chocolate, some wafering, chocolate, and then obviously drench some chocolate on there later on, right? So thinking about being Canadian, a very popular candy bar in Canada, it's called Coffee Crisp. It actually used to be my favorite candy bar. Like, I loved it. Ironically, I don't like coffee and I don't drink coffee. So now it's not, because I can taste the coffee and I don't like it. I used to get them, like my dad would give me like a box as one of my Christmas presents. Like, here's a box of Coffee Crisp. There you go. Okay. So that is what we can do. All right. So let's start with just simply taking a cube. All right. Let's make first our wafer cookie part. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's pick a different cube. Let's go with this route. I want less spans. We'll size this up. Okay, so it's got to be thin. I'm going to take perspective off just so we're looking at this. Something like that. It needs to be more of a rectangular shape, I would say. Would rather be pretty important for me. Let's go ahead and assign different polygroups here as well. So I'm going to want that top in the bottom to have different polygrouping to it. Okay, and let's start thinking about this also inside of here. Let's have these wafers have a little bit of change in the middle. So let's add a couple spans. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go 2. Okay, something like this. Okay, and let's go ahead and let's Q mesh by polygrouping. Let's just have this come in something like that. Okay. Yes. I never thought the day would come we'd be making a wafer cookie type thing. All right, let's go ahead and turn on our dynamic subdivision so we can see what this is going to look like divided up. Not cool. I don't like that. So let's throw some creasing on this so it goes back to being more a shape like that. Okay, this is definitely too, what's the word I'm looking for? Too perfect. Okay, so I'm going to add some more smooth levels. And I'm going to drop my creasing level down to 2 so it kind of starts rounding things out. And we're going to need probably one more. And now let's go ahead and let's mirror and weld across the Z and the X. So we get some spans of topology. Let's get more topology going. And let's insert a single edge loop now. And I'm going to make those corners be a little bit more sharp again. So I'm going to add that. And then I'm going to add also there and there and mirror and weld that. So now I've got just some more spans of topology in here. Just adding a few more. We want that side. Okay, there. That's enough. Okay, so now we've got this and this as one here. We'll make these completely... There we go. Okay, different polygroups. So this is going to be the start of my wafer cookie. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead now and apply the dynamic. So now we're looking at a mesh that's got 6 subdivision levels, 500,000 polygons. Okay. All right. And so now I have this, and I want to take advantage now of this pink polygroup. Okay. So I'm going to just look at only the pink part. All right, and I'm going to mask that off. Okay, and then bring everything else back, and you have this. Okay, now, when I'm doing this, I tend not to go this route, right? This is multiple clicks, where I only want, in essence, the pink unmasked, right? So if you think about it, I had to show my pink, mask it, bring everything back, and then flip it, right? That was 4 clicks, right? Was it 4? Was it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, okay. I'd rather do this, in essence, in 2 clicks. In essence, gizmo, hold control key, and then boom. Right? So because I'm on the gizmo, if I hold control key and click on the pink polygroup in this case, right, only the pink stays unmasked and every other polygroup is masked off. So I tend to prefer to work this way. Okay? And now what I'm going to do is let's give this a little bit more of some wafer, at least the wafers that I'm thinking of an old cookie in Canada too. Do we have any Canadians in here? There's a cookie I used to also get at IGA in Canada. And that's it's just a wafer cookie. And they made like strawberry ones, chocolate ones, and it's like a wafer with like some cream filling and then wafer, cream filling, wafer, cream filling. I don't remember what they're even called. You can't get them here in the States, at least not that one. There might be somebody doing something like that. I don't know. I don't even eat cookies anymore. So, all right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to surface noise and look at this in the surface noise. Okay. So I'll up the strength so you guys can see what's happening in here. Okay. And what I want to do is I'm going to click on the noise plugin, and it's launching over my other monitor. And this. And so what I want to do is put some wafer, more looking wafer cookie-like thing on this. Okay? So honestly, a good one I think that'll work probably pretty well is, let's see, scales. I think might work pretty well. Okay. So I'm just going to put this on. And right now we are transitioning between two things. We've got two noises now being applied. Okay. So I'm going to up this just a little bit more so you guys can see. So there's this noise that's being applied. And then there's the noise plugin. Okay. So there's two sliders for each. So this is going to control the noise scale is controlling this. Okay. And then this is controlling, in essence, the 3D noise from the noise plugin. So what I want to do is change the angle of this. Okay. So there's angle adjustments here that you guys can play with. So you can do 90 degrees, something like this. And now you can really see that, right? So you can see, you can get some kind of something like this. And if I don't want the two noises, I turn this off and now you've just got something like this, right? And then now you can play with the angles here. You can play with this angle and rotate it around. So now I'm rotating it twice, okay? There are other ones that you can use as well. So this is a good one. Okay, to play with. So there are a lot of different ones that you guys can use here. So you can see that could be a good one. There's houndtooth, there's hex tiles, right? There's bricks. Then maybe you want to round those bricks. There's a checkered board. So there's a lot of different stuff here that you can use. There's nesting shapes. So there's a lot of different stuff that you have in here. So there's some stripes, Veroni, right? There's spherical. And then there's snake skin. So to me, the snake skin is giving me a lot more what I would be used to in a wafer cookie a little bit. Okay? And so we can play with this. And maybe tighten it up a little bit. We can add randomness to it, right? Have variations. So it's not so perfect. But then I can round corners if I want to. Change the rounding. Something more like this, I guess. Okay, and then say okay. And then now do I want them to look more like that? And then now let's size it down. Something like that. And maybe I want something more like that in my wafer. And then say okay. Right? So this is giving me a better pattern that I would say is more like a wafer cookie. Okay? And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to inverse the mask now. So the wafer cookie part that I just did is happening actually here and not here. And I'm going to do on mask by noise. And you'll see what that did. Right? It's using, in essence, the noise as a mask. And so what I did is I did the opposite. I'm actually using the masking to now control where I want some noise to happen. Okay? So I'm inversing this. So wherever the mask is, this is the only spot that I want ZBrush to be used. Okay? And use on mask by the noise. So because this masked area is where the only spot the noise is going to go, I got this. I'm going to inverse it, right? And then now we can use a little bit of inflation. I'm going to hide the mask, and then I can just inflate this and get something like that, and then clear my mask. There, we've got a little bit of wafer cookie going now, right? And then now I can come back to this, and now let's turn off the plugin. And let's just add overall the whole cookie. Let's just add a little bit of some noise in there, okay? So now we've got this. This is my wafer cookie part, right? And now let me append another cube. In fact, let's just duplicate this one. I'm going to walk this one down to its lowest level. Okay, and delete that, and then this can be some kind of other filling. So let's go ahead and let's just polish this a little bit. And then I'm going to do a little inflating balloon just to give it something like that. And I definitely don't want this to have any noise on this one. So we can delete the noise from this. Okay, and I'm going to move this around a little bit. So let's symmetrically just shape this up a little bit. Just give it a little variation in there. Yes, we've always wanted to make a wafer cookie. Something like that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and then let's start applying something to this. So let's give this a material. Let's give this start giving it a little bit of a brown, chocolatey color. It's a little much. There we go. Let's fill this now with this material. And let's give our wafer more of a beige tone, I guess. So let's select that. And let's have this be a fast shader. I don't want that color. Fill object. Okay, so that way I can really see the difference between them. Okay. And let's go ahead now and make copies of this. Okay. So there's multiple ways we could do this copying, right? I'm a big fan of array mesh. Okay, so we can either just select this and copy it with the gizmo. The one thing that won't work is if I have subdivision levels, right? Because I have subdivision levels, this is not going to allow me to do the copying. If I delete the subdivision levels, then I can copy, right? And then just keep getting wafers stacked on themselves. Like I think this only needs like maybe 3 wafers like that. Okay, so you can either go this route or the other route using this chocolate part. We can use the array mesh, right? And then tell ZBrush I want to, and then now I can position this where I want it. The benefit now of array mesh over the other is that whatever I do to this, it happens to the other one, right? So that's the advantage of array meshing. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to, let's go ahead and make that a poly mesh. And now let's, for little giggles, let's even do some dynamics. So let's divide this up a little bit. Let's give it at least 16,000 polygons. I'm going to tell it to have a collision state. And let's not have the gravity be so much. Run that simulation. There, give it a little bit of droopiness. I don't like it moving that much. So let's maintain, let's only put droopiness on the bottom half. Let's have it start kind of drooping down the model a little bit. So using some masking there. Okay. There, that's good. And then let's go ahead and on top of that, let's turn gravity off. Let's do some expanding. Just to expand it out. Let ZBrush create some natural rippleness in the chocolate. And then there we go. And then deformation. And I'm going to even throw some inflating on that so we can get something a little bit like that. Just change it up a little bit, right? Okay. So there is that. And then now let's do one more thing here. So we've got this wafer cookie, right, sitting on the floor. Let's go ahead and append a plane. Okay, and this is going to take on chocolate shape as well. So let's do that color. And let's grab that material. And let's go ahead and fill that color. In fact, let's edit this material just a little bit, just for visual sakes. Let's give it a little more ambient, more diffuse. Maybe not that much diffuse. There we go. A little bit more speck. just so visually also you guys can see it better, the difference between them. All right, let's put this plane up here. All right, and I want this plane to be big enough to cover the wafer. Okay, something like that. Let's go even bigger. Let's get a little crazy. Let's go pretty big. Something like that. Okay. Let's give it a little bit more topology. Let's start at 4,000. Okay. And now I want to, in dynamics, I want to recalculate with this subtool. Okay. So I'm going to say recalculate, and now it's going to use this subtool and look at all the other subtools. So I have these 3 other subtools, and so I want this to collide with the other subtools in essence. Right? And let's say we don't want expand, we want gravity. So I'll let that go slow. I'm going to throw on some self-collision as well. I kind of want it to collide and make sure when it does collide, it's doing that. All right, and then now just run my simulation. Keep going, 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 and then stop. And then now I'm starting to get, you can see, some chocolate-like look. And now I can start eliminating some of this, right? So in fact, let's use the lasso to even say, okay, I don't need those polygons. I don't need those polygons. And let's eliminate those. Let's eliminate those. Let's go even deeper. Deeper, deeper, deeper. Something like this. Something like this. Okay, and delete hidden. And now I'm just going to polygroup, kind of what discussion we had. Auto group, and the only polygroup I want to keep is this. And then let's delete hidden. Okay. And then now this is starting to give me this kind of look. Okay. So now I want to play with this a little bit now and start using, I can either start using some of the brushes, right? Our cloth brushes that we have in here, like the cloth hook, right? And now that I have less topology, start just manipulating this so it looks like more like a chocolate. And if I have to, which I'm going to do, switch this to just give it more of a softer look. You guys, I'm sure, know where I'm going with this. Right now, when you're doing smoothing with this, okay, you can also switch to your smoothing brush. Okay, so there's a smooth cloth, which you guys can't see. Let me turn that off. Right here, there's a smooth cloth. You click on that, and then now this will do a little bit more smoothing to your mesh. Right, it's going to be a little bit stronger of a smooth. Oops. Because it's allowing every single vertex point to be smoothed out in essence. Right, so that's how I'm moving this border to give me more something looking like this. There we go. And then I need some thickness to this. So let's turn this on. And let's give it some thickness so that there's some volume to my chocolate. Something a little bit more like this. Right, and again, you continue. I can refine this. The cloth nudge, the cloth move is good. So you can just kind of move things around now. And if you want this to be more like dripping kind of chocolate type of thing, you can start doing this. Okay, so the question was also, though, how do I show the inner portion? This is the easy part. Okay, so I have all these. Let's put this in a folder. I'm just a folder fan. Candy bar. Okay, and then now to Ben's question, he's asking even how to take a bite out of this. This is all easy now. Okay, I'm going to put all these in one. So, okay, let's call this the cookie part. Top chocolate, right? Inner. It's hard to type here. Okay, now all I got to do is append a cube in this case, right? It doesn't really matter. Okay, what I'm going to pen with, and this is to your question, Ben, right? And now this cube, right, is going to be acting as a cut-in with live booleans. And then now you can just have this cut in to whatever you want. Right? This is it. Right? You're just going to use a piece of topology to cut in, right? So to your even question that you're asking, right? To Ben, you're asking taking a bite out of something. You could technically also just use this, right? And I can say, let's do a mesh extrude. And then now just kind of use even this, right, to start making another piece of topology, right? And then I'm going to want this to go as deep as it can. Just make any shape that you want, right? And then this shape can also be used to cut in to the cookie, right? So that way you can get a different look there to this. Okay? So obviously you could get a lot better and get actual, like get a nice silhouette of a bite mark and then use that as well. Okay, there you go. So this is how I would answer this question. How would I show the intersections of this, right? So there you have it. And then I would just use live booleans to do something like that. Okay? There you go. You guys have been going off on the chat. I haven't kept up. Is there a question that popped up, Daisuke, that you saw that would be a good one to make sure I answer before I move on to my next question? So I'll take a bite. I know you've been... Michael Povich was creating a grenade the other day, and he was creating the pull trigger for it. He said the easiest way to create the bit was to pin it to create the geometry, but instead he used a mask and created it that way. He said he went the hard way around doing it. What does he mean by pinning it to the create geo? I don't know what he's meaning. I know that there's a lot of things that means pinning. I don't know what he's meaning by pinning it to the geo. A hockey game bite mark. There you go, Doug. That's what I like. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Creating a pin, though, there already is one that ships with ZBrush. So even if you wanted to create it, there's already one in here. I think there's one in here. It's either in here or I know I've seen one. Me, if I was creating a pin, I'd probably just use ZModeler. Like to create that pin, I would literally, since you're now see my mind's stuck on this pin, I would just, really quickly go about doing something like this, and then the pin is like this. Let's say it's about that. Let's size it down a lot more than that. There is multiple ways to go about doing this, and then just copying this, and then now maybe this one sits more like this. Let me go back to my masking pen, and let's make it have a little bit different width. Doing this, brush Z modeler. Let's delete this face here. Now switch to bridge, 2 holes, circular if you want. And then now just click here. Whoops. Click here, and do something like this. Right? And then so when you smooth, you're going to create something like that as well. Okay? And if I want something a little bit more rounded, then the gap, I can just make the gap a little bit bigger. Oops. In here as well. And then now click, right? And then this is where, what do you want to rotate around? Okay? Pivot on the clicked edge, right? And then now this is going to give, if I click here, you could get sometimes different results. So you go that route. Or if you want something really rounded, then it'd be better just to start with something that already is rounded, like a cylinder, right? And there's your inner portion there, right? And then I don't need that or that, right? That's it. And then now I just want this and this here, right? So I'm going to say transpose, polygroup all, boom. And then something like this. And then now I'd probably, again, make this come like this. And then I would probably now really quickly clip it. I would need to see the reference, but I'm assuming something like this is what you're trying to get at, right? And then now this is a pin. And then now I would probably, last thing I do is we need that pin to sit a little bit tighter. So let's go symmetrical and have it kind of come together more here. Have it come together more here. Use something like this. And it definitely would not be this wide. So stuff like that. There's just so many ways to go about it. You could just use an image if you wanted to as well. Right? So I know there is one somewhere. It might even be in one of the images. I've seen it for Spotlight. Okay. But I don't know what he's necessarily referring to. I would need to see it. He might be referring to that. He might just be referring to the fact that he might be referring to just using an image, right? Like in Spotlight. I think there's a pin shape in one of the. I know I've seen it somewhere. I just can't remember where. It might be in one of these. Not in that one. There's an arrow. Not in that one. What's in this one? Some cool pieces, cool stuff throughout these, though. I know I've seen it somewhere. I can't remember. Like, and this is, you guys just grab the image, and then you hit this little camera button, and now you've got the geometry for it. Right? So that's another way. Okay. Let's see. Christopher. I was watching a tutorial of how to do spiky hair, and they were using a curve brush, but as they were setting and moving the curve to where they wanted, they were able to smooth the curve on the fly. Yes, you can do that. it has the ability to smooth curves on the, yes, you can do that. So if you have a curve like this, right, and as you're moving it, here, we'll go a little bit smaller, right, like this, and now you want to smooth this out. I'm assuming this is what you're referring to. Here, let's get more curve. Yes. So like this, I want to smooth this out. Is this what you're referring to? They were doing this. And then see, I can make this start smoothing completely. Is that what you're referring to? Something like that. And so now this is smoothing out right here. So now this is straight. This part's straight. Because you can do that. Okay? If you then are clicking here, right? And if you tap, you engage with the curve. If you hold the shift key, you actually can smooth the curve. Okay? And if we switch to something else, let's switch to IMM curve. Let's switch to this. Okay? You guys can also rotate parts of the curve. So you can do stuff like this. Okay, and then you said more like dynamic. They were probably using dynamic subdiv, Christopher. That's all you got to do. Like, I can turn dynamic subdiv on and off with this. Right? So if we go back to this curved tube, see, it's not, I can just turn on dynamic subdiv and it's dynamically on. So most likely that's all they were doing, is they were turning dynamic subdiv on and off. Because you can do that. You can have it on and then still manipulate while it's dynamically. This is the beauty of a dynamic subdiv. It's not actually divided right now, but I'm seeing the divided version of this. It's another beautiful thing about dynamic subdiv, why I love it so much, and why it's a big part of my workflow. I use it for a lot of stuff. So to your point, right? If I was making, let's grab a head, so at least we're looking at something that's more human. We don't need live booleans right now, right? So if we were stroke, let's go ahead and give this something like this. Let's even, in my modifiers, let's knock this down to 4. So it even creates cubes like this, right? So all this hair, stuff like this, right? Right? This is a mesh. So when you do this, it's going to show you dynamically the divided portion of this. Right? And so as I'm moving it, I'm seeing the smooth version, but what it really is this. It's really the faceted version of the topology. Hair on fire is right. Right? It's something like this. Does that make sense? So most likely, I don't know the video that you were watching, but they were probably using dynamic. It's probably what they were doing. All right, so there you go. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, let's move on to my next one, which is how do I go about creating blend shapes in ZBrush? Okay, so this is perfect for a model like this. I want to create some blend shapes. Okay, so I'm just going to divide up a couple, just give me a little more topology. So the easiest way to do blend shaping is using layers, is going to be the easiest way, right? So if I want to put a little funny smirk in her mouth, I create a new layer, and now that layer is in record mode here, right? And so now I'm going to switch to the move brush, and I'm going to give her a little smirk here, okay? But I'm also doing something else here. I'm not just doing a move, right? I'm not just grabbing it and doing this. Okay, I'm actually taking the mouth portion that I want to move, right? And I want it to do something in particular. See, I don't want this to happen. I want more something like that. right? Where it just kind of gives her a little smirk. And what I'm doing is changing this. Okay, I am changing the vertex points along the actual path of the face right now. Okay, and so how I'm doing that is I'm using the shift key. Right, so what I mean by that is, here we'll go bigger. When I'm clicking on this, this is default, right? If I hold the Alt key, we go out through the normal. Okay, for something like this, it would be better for me to click and then hold the shift key. And you can see it's trying to stay along the path of the face as best it can, right? So again, you click and then shift key. Right, and then obviously if you're doing this, you're gonna start touching it up. You're gonna change the sculpt, like the lips should all change. There should be some muscle firing starting to happen in here. Oops, I got smooth cloth on again, so let me switch my smoothing brush back to regular. Right, there's all these things now that start factoring in to make it start being more realistic. That's just a very bad smile. Okay. I'm just gonna name it smile. Okay, and then I can turn it off, make a new one, and then now maybe over here, brush, and I'm gonna move by topology and just start kind of giving an eye closure. Right, and this is the advantage of I can walk down a layer. Walk down a subdivision level, and that is still being maintained in the layer. So this is the one benefit of the layer system, is that I can actually edit on a lower level. And then now I can use something like a pinch and kind of just start bringing that eye closer and closer and closer and closer. Right, and then it needs some volume. Right, there's an eyeball still in here. Go up a level. Hey, Adrian! I did it! Hey, yo, you ain't so bad. Try knocking me down, hey? It's my best Rocky that I can give you. So she's got a bruised eye. Okay. We'll just call it eye for now. Right? So now, in essence, these are blend shapes. Okay? And in the world, and in ZBrush, you can turn on your movie timeline. Okay? And let's say I want my camera to go from here to here. Right? So this is straight. In fact, you know what? Let's do we got this, and let's do this. So then this will go this, and then let's take this and let's copy it. So now I got a back and forth. Yes, before anybody says it's NFT, right? So I got a back and forth here for my camera track, right? So my camera track has got that. And then now for this layer here, let's at the beginning have it turn on. And I can see my camera track dots here. And then we're going to go off here. So see along this. Okay, and then let's turn on this layer here. And then let's turn this layer off back here. So now we're going to have different things happening along the timeline. Let's see how well that's playing over the stream. Hold on, I want to see how well that's playing. Ah, it's actually playing pretty good. Playing really good. All right, so there you go, right? So this is a way you can do this, right? Now, the other thing that's important for you all is there is a plugin that's made specifically for Maya, okay? So in the plugins, there's actually a Blendshapes Maya plugin. All right. And what this is going to do is take every single layer and automatically bring it into Maya as a blend shape. Okay. So all you have to do is hit export blend shapes. Right. And I'm telling on only the selected subtool, only the visible subtool, or all subtools to go over. So when I click this button, it automatically goes through, looks at the model, drops at the lowest polygon count, automatically launches Maya for me in this case. Right? And then once Maya is done launching, it's also automatically going to give me the blend shape controllers with each layer being applied as a blend shape inside of Maya. So this is, for me, if I was doing this, this would be the route I would go for me. And this is the professionals, some of the people in the studios, this is the route they would go. Hold on, Maya's still launching. Still going through its process. Come on, move. Okay. Let's see. Are we launched? Okay, we're launched. Okay, so let me bring this on over. Okay. So as you can see, now we have this. And then here's my blend shape controls that are already there. So obviously, I have everything here inside of Maya now. Right? So whatever layers you have in ZBrush, they're going to keep coming over as a blend shape. And then obviously, you now key this, right, inside of Maya, right, adding your keys. Right, as you go through the timeline through here, right? That's it. That's, can't get any easier than that. Okay, so this is a way that I would do blend shaping. And then this is just a bonus part, is I can throw it into Maya through this plugin. And it's Maya because Maya is widely being used in all the film industry, right? It's one of the go-to programs that's being used. So and this plugin was written years ago, right? And of course, you can export, right, each of the layers individually as well if you wanted to. And right now, what Daisuke is bringing up is I can even export this timeline if I wanted to and bring this in to another program through an MDD file. But it's just having some fun with timeline. I like to call this more putting art in motion. Like, this is not animation. Like, we're not doing animation here per se, but it's putting art in motion where you can make things move. And especially if you want, make that NFT through ZBrush, here's a way you can do it. Okay? There you go. That's the blend shape one. All right. Another one that came through was this one. How can I use Mesh Fusion to create a hole through a mesh? This is one of my favorites. I love this one. This one's fun. Okay? Let me grab an insert mesh brush. Let's grab IMM parts because this is made with the purpose of the idea of using Mesh Fusion with inside of ZBrush. So we're going to turn this off. Okay. So this brush is specifically built for insert Mesh Fusion. All right. So I'm going to take the female torso. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go to brush and I'm going to say to mesh. That gives me the female torso. Now, this female torso was built with, just quickly, I was sculpting up a female torso, okay, and then I used ZRemesher to remesh this, right? That's all this is. But you'll notice there are certain polygroups also happening here. Like, there's a polygroup here at the bottom, right? Her body's got a different polygroup, then say here, and then say at the top of the head. This is really important, okay? Thanks, Goosebumps. That's so nice of you. Okay, and so this can now be fused. All right, so let's just have some fun with this. Let's grab the dog head. Okay, as an example, I can draw here, right? And then I'm just going to move the dog head a little bit, even where I want it to be placed. Okay, and then I can tell ZBrush to do that. So this dog head is now, see, fused with the rest of the body. See that? So it's all one piece now. Right? So what's happening here, there's some rules being thrown in here into play. Number one rule being polygrouping. This polygroup is a driving force. Okay? To the next thing now is when I draw this dog head out, okay, you'll notice, here, let's move this a little bit again. That dog head has an opening. Right? So you see there's a hole here in the dog head. This is very important, people. So the rule is going, okay, number one, I'm inserting a mesh that has a hole. Okay, and there's a polygroup. So what ZBrush is actually doing is this. It's deleting the polygroup that I drew on top of, which then creates two holes, and then we are bridging the two holes for you. And all you have to do is do what you do with Dynamesh, which is in essence clear your mask and then do it again. And then that second one is telling ZBrush, take the two holes now and put it together. Yeah, from NFT to Dogecoin. So true, right? So this, to that person's question, creating a hole through, it's all about, okay, so let's give this a little bit more geometry even too. It's all about what you're giving Mesh Fusion with the insert mesh brushes, okay? So as an example, we could do something like, let's grab even a ring 3D. All right, let's make this initialized state only be 180 degrees. Whoops. So 180. Okay, good enough for me. Make that a polymesh. Okay, Z modeler. I'm going to delete flat island. Delete this. Delete this. And now make this its own brush, right? Excuse me. So I'm going to look at the back part because that's the way I'm going to want to draw. B, create insert mesh brush, new, right? So now I'm doing this. I'm just creating an insert mesh brush. So you hit the B key. Okay, if you want, hit create insert mesh brush, which is right here in the brush palette. Create insert mesh brush, or you say from mesh. Can even create an insert mesh brush, right? Every time I do this, see, it's just adding as an insert mesh brush. And now I have this. So if we go back to her, this particular one, I'm even going to throw in an extra variable here. I'm going to symmetrically build 4 holes and polygroup this. So now these have one polygroup, as you can see, right? And now what I've got is a torus that has a hole on the top and a hole on the bottom, and I've got symmetry. And then now I can do stuff like that, right? So this is all fused, and this is all fused, right? So this is an example where I had a hole in the top and the hole in the bottom, and all I got to do is make sure those polygroups are the same. These have to be the same polygroup. I can't have something like this. That will not work. If I draw on this green now, then it's only going to fuse the top part. See? The bottom part does not fuse. Okay? So because the polygroup that I drew on was the green one, right? Not that purple one. Okay? So with that said, if you guys now take a look at this, and let's say, let's go and let's take a cylinder. I'm not going to have any spans there. Let's align it along the Z. Make it a poly mesh. I'll go a little bit wider. For fun, let's throw a little bit more elements in this. Let's do some insert multiple edge looping. Do something like that. Let's go ahead and now QMesh poly loop. Let's expand this out something like that. Let's insert a single edge loop this direction. And let's do that. And let's put one way here. Do something like that. All right. And then now in here, let's do that multiple again. I'm going to on purpose change my polygrouping. Let's QMesh now polygroups. Let's pull that out and change that polygrouping. Okay, and let's go ahead and I'm going to extend this. So we got something more like that. Maybe not that much, more like that. Okay, let's take a look at this, what this would look like divided. Okay, I don't like that. So I'm going to crease by Gaboury or crease by polygroup. I'm just, as a joke, used to saying that. And so this is what I have that I'm making right now. Something like this, right? And maybe I'll have this go in. And let's insert and have this pull out again. Okay, so we got something different going on here. Okay? And then now, let's delete, again, this and this. So in essence, I got a surface that actually has a hole going through it, right? There's a hole going through this. So now all I need to do is grab it from this direction. Plasma grenade, I'll take it, yes. Brush, create insert. Okay, so I'm just creating an insert mesh brush. Nothing new here. This is all I have, right? Is the ability to do this. Okay, right? And then now going back to her. Okay, we have this. I'm going to even now add another brush into this for me. I'm going to do slice circle. And I'm going to square, make it a perfect circle, and I'm going to center it. So I'm going to center out from out. Do something like, okay, let's put it in her belly. Something like that. And now what I have is a polygroup that's the same on the front and the back. Right? We got that blue and green. Okay? And so this blue becomes important. So now what I have is this insert mesh brush. Right? When insert mesh brushes get drawn out, they're automatically looking at the vertex that they're drawing on and aligning it, right, along that vertex. You can see that blue arrow. It's aligning along the vertex I drew out. What I want to do is when I'm drawing out, I don't want it to be like that, right? I want the ability to shift this, okay? So what becomes important is when you're drawing it out, right? Do you want it to have an angle or you want to make it look straight on the camera, right? So you can see this is looking straight at it now, right? And what's controlling that is the gizmo. So there are two states to you doing insert mesh brushes. This blue arrow is the most important arrow, everybody, by the way. This is very much a Lisa needs braces moment. This is getting your attention, okay? So this is really, really important. I'll come back to the timeline. How something is being drawn out is looking at a normal, but I can shift it to the gizmo. So if I start drawing here, see how drastic of a change I can get because the gizmo blue arrow is facing that direction. Why the blue arrow is so important, people, is when I picked up this mesh, what axis was I looking down? I was looking down the blue axis, which is the Z, which obviously the blue here is the same thing as that gizmo blue, right? So that's rather important, okay? So this is important to understand why that blue arrow, when I go here, is so important to me, okay? Because wherever that blue arrow is pointing, right? When I do this, see, it points towards that blue arrow. And what I'm doing when I draw out, I hold the shift key. And now when I hold the shift key, that tells ZBrush, look at the gizmo orientation instead of the vertex I'm drawing on. Okay? So I want to take advantage of this by resetting this so I'm looking straight ahead down the blue arrow. Okay? And so when I start drawing this out, I want that to happen. I want this to look straight on through. Okay? So that's the first thing to understand. The second thing is if I want this to be a hole, okay, I'm going to need to actually add one more shortcut in this. so that this happens. I want this to sit inside the mesh, and I can even tweak this, right, a little bit. And so when I do this, we get a hole through her. And notice that hole is made up of the topology, right, that I made in the cylinder. See that? And then it's got a nice clean transition. ZBrush gives you new topology where it's got to connect this topology with this topology. And this is not as dense as this, right? So ZBrush has to go and figure it out for you. Okay? So again, it's important. This polygroup matches. Okay? And now I've got a mesh that has a hole in the front and a hole in the back. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Alt key, click, and then now also hold the Shift key. So that when I'm drawing this out, the Alt key tells ZBrush for this to be an inner piece, okay? And the Shift key is aligning it. And now all you do is hold Control, click and drag, hold Control, click and drag, and then ZBrush fuses everything together for you. That's why it's called Mesh Fusion. Okay, because it's fusing the mesh, insert mesh brush to this. So this is how you create a hole through a piece of geometry using insert mesh brushes. And then the benefit here again to this technique, people, instead of using, say, something like Dynamesh or Live Booleans per se, is that none of the topology is changing here, here. The only topology is changing is this, right? And then connecting topology there. That's it. And then this topology is going to be all quads as much as it can be. So either quads or triangles. So Live Booleans could even work for this as well, obviously. Right? And obviously, the other route about going through this, we'll keep that whole, would be coming back to this. Right? And let's go back to putting the caps back on this, because I'm going to need the caps. Going back to this, and then now just append this piece, right? Size it down to where you want maybe the hole going through, and then turn in subtractive with Live Booleans, and now you've got the hole. The benefit to this is it's live, so I can adjust this and put this where I want, right? And even do stuff like this, okay? So these are the two ways. This is going to be the fastest way, but they're asking specifically with Mesh Fusion, this person, right? And then now you can see I can have different holes. And then this one can rotate, shrink it back. Maybe I don't want it to be a complete hole. Maybe I want something like this. See, this is the benefit of Live Boolean, right? Mesh Fusion, Live Boolean. I'm glad this is blowing the mind. Okay, so to the question now that came through as well, we can turn this one off, is about what can be put along the timeline. Okay, so you have to go to Movie, Timeline, and turn it on. Okay, but what can be put along the timeline is the menu right below it. Timeline Tracks. This is all the stuff that, in essence, we don't give you each timeline for every single track. It's only one track at a time. Okay, so here's all the tracks that you can have. So you got color, wireframe, subtools, subdivisions, layers, contacts is great, adjustments. Solo mode, you want it on and off. Subtools is fun. That's a fun one, right? So you can go camera, and then I can go to linking. I can link subtools, right? You can link it. You can enable subtool. This is what are enabled. You can link to certain things, and then you edit. So now that I have, let's see, let's load something like this. Let's turn on timeline. Okay, and then let's say now, let's start our camera here. Let's go here and rotate a little bit here, right? So now you got this action happening. Okay, but what we've also done is we can enable subtools. Okay, on the camera track we can enable that. So what I can do is somewhere along here, I can turn off some subtools, make that a keyframe, right? Right? And then now I can have those off, and let's say now here, let's turn them back on, right? And start manipulating this to also, it's been a while, to go along there as well. And we need to link it. It's not letting me link. I'll have to look at this. So you have multiple ways to look at playing. So in essence, these are just tracks, okay, that you can do, right? So you can see here's the subtool track. So as it's going through the camera, you can see the subtools are turning on and off. Right, so there's the camera movement track, and now I'm on the subtool track. If I click on the document, see it goes back to camera. If I going through here, right? So there's different tracks. So depending on what you want to edit, right? Whatever is enabled is what you can edit. Right? So if you want transparency, you can actually enable transparency, right? Also to be used in the track if you want to. You can enable polygrouping, right? So if I turn polygrouping on, right, and then turn polygrouping off, right, you want to have the ability to also do this polyframing, right? So I want to say, let's edit now. Let's actually edit wireframe. Okay, so I want it on. So you see now it says wireframe. Let's turn it off here. So see now we've got multiple things happening. So you go in here and you say what track do you want to edit? You edit that track, right? Any ones that you want to make sure that they can be on, and then linking's allowing you to link multiple with one over another, right? So the big thing is make sure you enable something, and then what track do you want to edit? So you can edit perspective. So I think the person was asking about lights, so no. Okay, and how to remove a marker? You just click on a marker and drag it off, and then that's it. Right, and then to move a marker, you can move a marker. You just click and drag it anywhere you want. Right, so you can move them. You can even copy. So if you just click on one, and now just hold the shift key, go anywhere else, it's now copying the same marker. That's how I made the head go like this in the timeline, right? Going back to this head, right? To keep this in a simpler sense. Let's show your timeline again. Okay, so the first marker is the head looking straight at it. And then now I'm just going to rotate this direction. And I want that camera view. And then camera. So now see I have this. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and let's shift click it. Right, so it's going to start looking straight ahead, looks one way and comes back. And then now I probably also then want another rotation this way and then make that dot. So now you have this. Hold the shift key, press this, and it'll play through for you. Okay. So you can have that. And to your ease in, you make another dot, and then you can actually hold the control key, and then that's an ease in. This is an easing in. So this dot now controls a variation in speed, right? So when this plays, when it hits that dot, it has a different easing in and easing out. Right? So this was using the control key. Hold the control key, and you click and do that. And then you can make it a harsh, holding the Alt key to make it harsh. Okay, so there's a lot of shortcuts for this. So people, the best thing to do is in the timeline, see this show button, hold down the control key, and there's everything you need to know about the timeline. all of its shortcuts. It's got a huge image telling you what the difference is between it, right? And telling you about the tracks, bringing it down. Like, I made this years ago, so this could be beneficial for you. Okay, and then we put all the shortcuts in there, right? So on the right of this, so you can see over here all the shortcuts. So again, just hover over the show and timeline and hold down the control key. Okay. Makes sense? There you go. Christoph, I'm asking about camera, focal length, and reference image because it would be great for likenesses. What about it? This is now a universal camera. So in the draw palette, it has focal lengths and focal views, and you can even import a camera from another application through an FBX, and then it would come down here and store it. So that is possible. Okay, and then rendering from the timeline. Okay, number one, this is a video, right? So to make the video now, you hold down Control and Shift, and you tap on that, and see now it's making a video of this. And then that's it. So now in the movie palette, there'll be now, I can play movie, right? And now you can see it's playing that. And then I now have the title image. I'm going to turn that off, fading in and out, which you guys can add a title image to it. And then now, see, if you play movie, there'll be no title image. And when I made this movie, I told it to also record the UI. Right? So that's controlled with right here. So if I delete the movie that right now ZBrush is storing, delete it. Do I want to save? No. So now I can say, no, give me the document only and its largest document space. And now again, hold down Control Shift, tap on this. It's now creating the video based upon the timeline now and all the keyframing that's done within the timeline. When it's done, you go to the movie, you can play movie, and then there it is. Right? And then now I want high quality, so I turn on this H, and then you export. Now, if you want to render, right? So when you render out, right, this is going to look a little different. It's going to look like this. So if you want a render of this in a video, you have to BPR render first, then hold down Control Shift and tap. And this is going to take a lot longer now because you can see now it's rendering out every single frame. So depending on this, there's no way we're going to sit here and watch this render out in this stream. Even though it's going relatively quick, this is going to take time. This is probably going to take, at this speed, maybe, I don't know, maybe 4 minutes, 5 minutes to render out this whole video. I'll let it go some more frames so you guys can see what's going to happen here. I'll let it get to this notch right here, and then that way we got at least some video so you guys can see. Okay, so we'll let that go a little bit more, because this is literally not very... Okay, there. Now I hit the escape key, but this is still in the movie. So when I play the movie, I'm going to get the first one. See, you can see the render. There's your render. So here, let's export it real fast. Let's see. Let's put this on my desktop. All right, just save it out. It's making the render. There, it's done. This is a very, 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 very short video. Go here. Desktop. Let's see, ZBrush. What did I call it? There it is. All right. And then, hold on. Here you go. So you can see the render is now there. So if you want the render in your timeline video, you have to render first, then do the timeline. Again, obviously rendering is going to take time, and it's got to render out every single frame. Okay, there you go. So there's a little bonus footage for you all, getting into a little timeline stuff. Christoph, you can bring a reference image in as well. You might want to, you're going to need to use two things. I would probably, for what you're doing, you can use, most people in the film industry, for what you're trying to bring up, use this image plane for their reference images. Because this will store with projects as well. And projects will store cameras as well. So this is what most film people do. They use these to match up because they can bring in a custom image. So you can do that. Because then this image will fill the back document space. So whatever your document size, so if you're bringing an image that's 1920 by 1080, you want your document 1920 by 1080. And then you want that to be filled. And then when they bring in an image, it'll be filled that way. So most people in the film industry use this with the ability to bring in their cameras and then save out projects. Okay. All right, that's it. Unfortunately, I got to head out. Again, next week's stream's going to be a little different. I'm sure you guys have been seeing it pop up, those headphones that right now that are popping up for me. That is what I'm going to be building for you guys. So this is kind of more of like taking the idea we did when we did a baseball cap and we did the coffee maker. I'm going to show you guys the process and the features I use to make those headphones. So we're going to be doing that in next Friday's stream, right? So you make sure you'll want to come by for that stream, okay? Which is the 16th of July, right? So come by for that stream, and we'll be building those headphones from scratch, and I'll show you the main features I use to make this stuff happen, and that way, you guys, you can see something being built from beginning to end. So that's what we'll be doing the next stream. All right, so hopefully I can see you all there. It's been a pleasure as always. Thanks for taking the time to be with me on the Fridays. I hope you guys all took something away from this stream, learned a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Daisuke, for being in here and answering questions within the chat as well. Greatly appreciate it. I know the users did. They're saying thank you as well. So really appreciate that. Again, I am Paul Gaboury with Pixologic, and you've been watching another live segment of hashtag Ask ZBrush. Don't forget to send in your questions through Twitter, hashtag Ask ZBrush. Okay? And thank you again for joining me. I'm out. Bye.